Think about Leonardo da Vinci, Raphael, Michelangelo. Why are they so well recognized? It's all about marketing. It is what people are willing to pay for something is what the value is.
Sir Daniel Winn.
Sir Daniel Winn.
Internationally renowned blue-chip artist Sir Daniel Winn. His sculptures and paintings featured at exhibitions around the world are unparalleled and unrivaled.
Studied medicine to become a doctor, but then gave it up to become an artist.
My artwork is based on my experience as an orphan in Vietnam, struggling and living in the street.
Art can bring a lot of good to this world. Hopefully my painting here will raise a lot of money for the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles.
Art-wise, it's not always what you see. It's not all champagne and caviar, yachts, and private jets. It's a lot of hard work. You have to work really hard and struggle, and a lot of sacrifice has to be made.
What is the most challenging experience you've ever had in your career?
Excuse me.
Daniel, welcome to my studio. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here, and I'm really excited.
Hey, Vinny, it's great to be here. I'm excited about this interview.
Great. Well, I actually don't have the words to describe you. So I'm going to actually ask you to just give my audience a quick, high-level, description of yourself, because you're larger than life and bigger than my vocabulary.
Well, let's see. 20 seconds, I feel like I'm just a regular person, but for some, they consider me as an artist, curator, and philanthropist. But more in general, I just feel like I'm just regular Daniel, and I connect and want to be treated like anybody else does.
Oh, that's true. But you're way more than that as well. I mean, if I remember correctly, you have a medical degree as well?
No, I actually went to school at UCI to get my medical degree. And it was like a 8-year, and I gave it up halfway in between because there were some traumatic incidents that happened. And the only reason I went to go into the medical profession, into reconstructive surgery, was because of my culture, my background. My father and stepmother wanted me to be either have two choices, engineer or doctor. And engineer is a little bit too, I would say, left brain, too technical. So I wanted something a little bit more artistic. So I figured, you know what, reconstructive surgery, at least I have some kind of artistic leeway to do my have my passion in.
Okay, well, we'll dive into your past and work our way up to that. But that's I find you fascinating. I'm a fan of your art.
Thank you.
And this is one of your pieces of the year. And do you want to just maybe start off by telling us about it? And I actually purchased this piece, so I'm the proud owner of it. But tell me what you were thinking when you created it.
Well, first of all, thank you for being the patrons of the arts. And particularly, I appreciate that you collect my work. And my work is more of a philosophy. A lot of people ask me, why do you do this? What prompted you to create this? What was your vision? Do you have a model? What do you do? My work is more of philosophy. It is a mathematical equation that is communicated through visual art. So in a way, it's a visual communication of what I'm trying to communicate based on my experience from a childhood to adulthood. What you're seeing here is called the Holding Time series. It's very complex, very complicated. I started the sculpture first in clay, then transformed the clay through the molding, and then used the mold to create the lucite, which is the acrylic medium, to give a understanding about my philosophy. I use no models, no anatomy, no reference, because I have total recall of anatomy since my medical background schooling. So I create based on what I want to communicate in a way of how we deal with our existence and what is the purpose and meaning of life. Here, the series Holding Time is about us and time and space. A lot of people feel that time controls us, but what I'm trying to communicate is that time is a man-made construct. And who made it? We did. So if we made time, we are in essence control of time. We are in the essence of understanding and directing and holding of what we've created. So here I just want to relay a message that time is all relative. And the time that we're in this world is brief, but it is what we make a positive influence makes a difference, because when we leave this world, my belief and my philosophy is that the energy is still there and we are eternal. So here in holding time, it's just showing that we hold time in our hand. We control time, whether it's past, present, or future. It is in our control. And this whole series explains a little bit more about my philosophy using mathematics and equations with the cubes and the hands, and explaining my philosophy with that, what universal truth represents. I know that's a lot to absorb, but we'll get in detail.
I mean, as someone who's someone who consumes the arts as opposed to creates it, for me, I can tell that control over time that we have is embodied in this piece.
Yes,
because we actually are in control of our time.
We are or not?
We are.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we set our own schedule. We set our own time.
Yeah.
The only thing that we feel like we're not in control of is our mortality. Yeah. And see, that's, I think, for me, being where I came from with as an orphan, being deserted, living the street, and understanding the...
Well, let's actually go. Let's start with that. Let's go back. Where were you born, and how did you...
Okay.
How did you... let's talk about your life story. I'd love to get a good timeline.
All right. Oh, let's see. Where do we start?
Where were you born?
Where were you born? Well, in Vietnam, South Vietnam, in Saigon, Bien Hoa, Dong Nai province. And this is during the war. It's complicated, but briefly, my father went to war in the... the late 60s, and they thought for the as an interpreter for the South Vietnamese army assisting the American soldiers, and he had I think through the Jeep, the story he told my grandmother and back to me is that there was an accident with him and a general or something, and they thought that he died, and he was actually in a coma for about a year. So, actually more than that. So during that time,
This is before you were born?
No, this is when I was about, if I recall, I know they're writing a book about this and a movie coming out. I was about probably 6 years old. And my birth mother remarried because, she thought my father died, and she remarried me. My stepfather was not too kind to me and neglected me.
Sorry to hear.
So then I was pretty much left to do what I want as a child in the street, was not fed properly. So then my grandmother asked one of my uncle at that time to, in a way, kidnap me. And it was easy because it seemed like my birth mother and stepfather didn't really want me, so they had no problem with that. So I went to live with... my uncle, but then he had to go to war, and then he was actually killed in the war as well. So then my grandma took me, and she, couldn't afford to raise me. She was struggling heavily, supporting everybody as she could as well, my other uncles. So then I was put in an orphanage, and I was really rambunctious. And during that time, I was not, too happy, and I was struggling. And I didn't have enough food to eat. I lived in the street for a while, and then eventually I went to the orphanage, but then they kicked me out because I was so, not a bad kid, but you can understand at 6, 7 years old, you feel like you've been abandoned by your father, your mother, your stepfather, your uncle, even though it's not his fault. Then your grandmother put you in an orphanage, and, you feel you're discarded and abandoned. So you take it out in the world. And then so they kicked me out, and my grandmother tried to take care of me. And during that time, I struggled a lot and lived in the street, and, would go and pick apples and, people's yard. That's how I survived. And that was tough.
How old were you?
At that time, I was around 7 years old.
Wow.
And but eventually my father did come back, and that was a blessing.
Yeah.
Because when he did come back, he had support of the, I think by the government, U.S. government at that time, and I think the army or something. And ultimately, it was for a brief few years, it was almost back to normal. And then he got remarried. And my stepmother, because, there's a culture that if you're a second wife, so to speak, I think it was like a taboo. It's like a mistress. And so she did not treat me kindly at that time. Not as because of her fault. It was just the general pride. And then they had their own child, my half-brother, and I was again neglected. So it was not easy for me. And eventually in 1975 is when ultimately the last day of Vietnam, the U.S. government allowed my father to take a few people, literally just whatever we had carry in our hand, to go on the last helicopter to the plane, eventually to the U.S. And my father was able to take his wife, my stepmother, myself, and my stepbrother, and to the U.S.
That's amazing. What a story. And where did you land out here?
Oh, man, that was another story in itself. Initially, I think we went to Guam and stayed there for a few months. And then after that, we went to the U.S. at Camp Pendleton, and I stayed there for a few months, which is right. I pass it all the time. And I got to tell you, every time I pass it, I have this almost like butterfly in my stomach. I don't know why. But it was an ordeal, and I still have nightmares on the last day of Vietnam escaping, watching people in the street being, killed, and it was tough for a 9-year. I was 9 at that time, and I didn't understand what was going on. And we went to the embassy, and then eventually get on the helicopter, and then went to Dong Nai, where I think that was the base there, and then got on a cargo plane. I just remember the cargo plane sitting in the back, and we strapped all of ourselves next to all these crates, and there were like hundreds of people on it, and then next thing, everybody passed out. And then we woke up being strapped, so there was no pressurization. So it was something that was very interesting, so to speak.
Oh, this is an incredible story. And so, I mean, it's incredible to see how the emotions, obviously, that you experienced played out in your art over time. Would you say that period of time was formative?
Oh, absolutely. And it's just not about me. This is about a child that lives through war and through his eyes. And I believe and I feel that all of us have adversity in their life in one way or the other, depending on how extreme. In my case, it is extreme, but I'm sure there's others that have much more extreme experience than I do. But what I'm trying to do through my art is to give my experience and try to have an understanding of why things happen in your life. Because a lot of us ask when things happen, why me? And my philosophy now that I'm much more mature and wiser and older and hopefully a lot wiser is to give viewers and people out there a better understanding of themselves. Not necessarily about me, but by looking through my art, it's like my visual language, my way of communication. Instead of writing a book, it is my artwork that they can see themselves and that they can embrace their existence and understand that whatever happens is meant to be and it's okay. There will be no life without death. There's no triumph without struggle. There's no pleasure without pain. There's no sweet without sour. And for me, I've come to the realization that no matter what happens in my life as a child, it's who I am now because of that, and it made me possibly a better person because of that. And hopefully, by embracing it, I can make a positive difference in this world, so that others can see what I've gone through as a child and as an adult, that they can see themselves in the mirror and enhance their existence as well.
I mean, you chose to take the positive approach to things. It was a decision, right? It wasn't like you didn't take you could have gone a different path in life. What happened to you? But you chose to take the positive path forward.
That's a great question, and there were some crossroads in my life at various ages that yes, I could have definitely gone to the dark side.
Yes.
Gone to the opposite direction. And I'm blessed that I feel that I made the right choice. And I think it's because how I really came to terms of who I am and accept and embrace what it is, and then always think about the people that are supporting me. My grandmother, and the people I connect with, that there are good people in this world, that there are good in positivity. So I have options in numerous times in my life. Do I take this or do I go this route? It wasn't easy, I have to tell you. And I'm glad I chose this path. And what I want to do is share the world and people that are going through what I had gone through or even going through it now, is to really assess what has happened and what's going on and choose your path, because every path has consequences and has a reaction. And just look at carefully within yourself, because that path, if you can make a positive difference in this world while you're here, that's the most important thing that your existence is valued at. Not what you have, what you materialistic, or what you can take with you when you're gone. It's not about that. It's what you make a positive influence in this world is the key. And once you realize that, I think you will make the right choice for you. So
That's
in my
wonderful.
opinion,
That's very beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, so you came here from Vietnam, 9 years old. I'm guessing you didn't have a very strong educational sort of background back there, given what was happening. How did you come? You came here, and how did you just pick up and learn a whole new language? I'm sure you weren't fluent in English. And tell me that story, like the next 9 years until you were finishing high school. What happened?
I think I was raised because in the streets, I was very street smart. Language-wise, I caught on very quickly. Vietnamese is my first language. And then when I went to orphanage, I had to speak French. And then in U.S., I've learned English and then ultimately Spanish. So I have 4 languages that I'm fluent in, although I've forgotten a lot about French. But give me a month, I'll be back fluent again. But being in the U.S., it was very difficult. Coming here during that time in 1975 was very different than what it is now. I was the only Vietnamese in my elementary school and actually even my junior high and high school. I do remember how all the kids looked at me. More of a curiosity. They're very inquisitive. I wouldn't say if it was racism or prejudice, because as a child during that time, I had no idea what that meant either. But I do know that they treat me differently. But for me, as I recall, it was more of a curiosity. And yes, looking back, there were traces of that racism involved, but I don't feel or
especially
believe.
since the war just ended, right?
Yes.
And it had been going on for a long time, and
Yes.
and so they saw you as part of the other side.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think looking back, they were looking at it as a curiosity, and the racism was not intentionally. It was indirect, but if it would happen now like that, definitely you would call that so. But I don't look at that as anything that was malicious. But it was very difficult.
Which city were you in at the time?
At that time, I remember going from Camp Pendleton in the drive all the way to Oxnard, Ventura.
Oxnard, okay.
I threw up all the way. The first time I was in a car, and it was so bad. We were sponsored by a family, and the family, I mean, they were okay. I mean, they got government money, and they put 4 of us, my father, stepmother, and half-brother, into one small 10-by-10 room, and that's how we live. I remember that my father went, and both of them, they were very educated in Vietnam. And here, they had to work my father, I believe, was in a mushroom factory, and my mother picking strawberries. And it was really difficult. And we lived in the sponsored house for about 7 months, and then eventually had our own apartment. But the English barrier, I got to tell you, was not hard for me. I learned everything and grasped everything. I'm laughing at this because I think Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig, and Daffy Duck, Warner. Yeah, that's how I learned.
Right?
That's how I learned. I was in front of the TV pretty much all the time, and I absorbed it like a sponge.
I mean, your English is perfect. It's impeccable.
I like to think that I'm okay with it. And the beauty and the natural thing about it is, like a year later, when I was in, where was that? I think it was 4th grade. There was a National Spelling Bee. And I didn't even study. I was actually, I was still a rambunctious kid, latchkey kid, so to speak, because both my parents had to work and they had to go to school. My father went to law school and my mother went to architect school. So I was left alone taking care of my 3-year-old brother, stepbrother. So I had a lot of responsibility, and I absorbed a lot. But I went to the spelling bee, won the school, won so much. I went to the national spelling bee, and I could have won the ultimate prize, and as being there only a year, Vietnamese American, and they were shocked. But then I lost one word, which says it all. And there's a movie coming out, title with the word that I lost, which is scarcity. I think I blocked it out because of my traumatic lack of as a child. I knew what that word was, but the more they asked me about that, I remember it so succinctly. Two guys left.
Did you still win the bee?
Oh, I lost that because of that word, because two guys left when they say, okay, scarcity. So I remember everybody was looking at this, he won. I mean, that word was so easy. Then I was like, I had a mental block, and I look at the judge and says, can you repeat that? Can you put in a sentence? Can you put it in this and that? And eventually I missed the word. It's not because I didn't know it. I think it's because of the trauma as a child, having lack of so much, and being the scarcity of that made me lose that. And now, in a way, the movie's made for that, using that title. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so you finish high school. You're thinking about the future. You have to make a decision.
Yes.
Oh, like, what are you going to study? What are you going to do? And what were the factors that contributed to your path in life at that point?
Being Asian raised, the culture is very different. It's family oriented. You do what you're told, and you can't disappoint your parents. That's how I was raised. And my parents here wanted me to become either an engineer or a doctor. So I went, great grades, did everything that ideal child would do, and then went to college. I only applied to one school, got scholarship at UCI, went there, and in the midst of that, I was like still not understanding what my role in the world is. But I did know that I love art. I was constantly creating, even in school, something creative, whether it's a sketch of an anatomy, anything that requires artistic, I'm in it. And in philosophy, I minored in philosophy in college. So that really intrigued me. And it's not only then when my grandmother ultimately was able to come to the U.S. after several attempts to escape that failed. Ultimately, she was able to came over, and I was so excited. And then she was only with me for a few years, and then when she passed away, I remember her last word is, go with your heart. Do what you were meant to do in this world. And it really hit hard. And I had struggled of whether I need to please my father and stepmother, or do I go with my heart based on what my grandmother. I went with what my grandmother said, because to me, she was much more closer to me than anyone. She was probably the only person that I loved deeply. And when she passed, I had an epiphany. This is what I needed to do. And I didn't even tell my parents at that time. I just literally skipped everything, decided to just not to come home, live in my car, and then ultimately just quit and didn't even go back to school. And they didn't even know about it. And I didn't disclose it. And ultimately, we did. But I lived in my car for a few years, worked at art supply so I can get it for discount.
You lived in your car for a few years?
About 3 years, yeah. I showered at the gas station, and
Wow.
Trust me, it
How
was
old
not
are
easy.
you? 20?
At that time, I was 22, 23, I believe. But it was time to me is just all jumbled up. But I do remember I was always hungry. Mm-hmm. And I always go, kids nowadays don't understand what a telephone booth is.
Yeah.
I used to go to telephone booth and to laundromat to see if there's loose change. And any kind of loose change would have been great for me with top ramen. I was the best at making top ramen at that time. But it was a struggle, but it was fine. I lived in the street when I was a child. I struggled as a child. So to me, it was nothing that I couldn't handle. If anything, it was probably a little bit easier for me because there were amenities here, like the gas station that was free at that time. There were free water, this and that. It wasn't so bad. And, I was okay. And it made me I feel like even opened my eyes and made me a better person as well.
That's great. Okay, so what happened then?
Well, it's so ironic and poetic irony is that my favorite cartoon character was Porky Pigs and Daffy Duck and all that. Chuck Jones was the creator of that. You know who Chuck Jones is?
Chuck E. Jones.
Yes, Chuck E. Jones. So what happened was at that time, I was working at an art supply. One of, I think the staff that worked at Chuck Jones Gallery at the time went and got something framed. I did something and they thought I was brilliant and invited me to one of the show because I said I love Chuck Jones. So I met with Chuck Jones and he adored me immediately. He asked question and he recommended me to go to his corporate to, he knows I do framing and he said, why don't you go to a corporate and, see if you can get some account there. So I did. And I went there and they literally said, if you want to, we'll give you this account to frame up 100 of Chuck Jones's animation cell. So then I did have some money saved up working at Aaron Brothers and I basically bought anything that was used. And then I said I took on it and I started framing Chuck Jones's animation cell for their gallery at wholesale. And I did a great job that they continue to do so. And I think everything the money saved, I then started opening a small frame shop.
So that's your first business, basically.
That's my first business, and knowing nothing about business as an entrepreneur, no business, I think it was just street smart and passionate, and also I think I really admire Chuck because my English is because of him. You say I speak great English. I'm surprised I don't speak like Daffy Duck. So it was all great. And then from there, I saved a lot of money to ultimately open a small art gallery. Because with that money, I was able to create my own work and was able to sell a few of my work at that time to certain art patrons. And it just became so almost like a dream come true. And then I opened an art gallery, and I thought it was going to be my ideal life. But that all changed as well because I feel like the universe had better plans for me. And I was not prepared to be an artist yet. That's how I feel like the universe was preparing me for something different. So the gallery was only a few years. And then I had an art patron. At that time, I believe it was the American Express president. And another one that was, right now, he was part of the Caesars Entertainment, owns pretty much all of Vegas. They were actually my art patrons at that time. They loved me. They adored me. They actually wanted me to work for them, too. And I said, no, I didn't give up my profession to work as a business, but they adored me. But they said to me, whatever you want to do in the future, include us. So then at that time, I met my partner, Randy Slavin, and he's a businessman. And we thought we can expand this on something a little bit more than just an art gallery. So we wanted to become an art agency to represent artists because at that time, I felt artists like myself were underrepresented. And we didn't feel that it was fair for these artists to be taken advantage of. And we want to take them to point A to point Z to be successful as a blue chip. So we decided to do an art fair, learn a little bit about industry, but we had, not a lot of capital. So I decided to call a couple of my patrons and say, hey, you said that you want to be partners. So basically they gave us a blank check. I'll tell you the amount later on, you'll be shocked. And because we had no idea what it's going to cost to do that. So we decided to do that. But by doing so, I did not realize as opening an art agency that it is a real business. And we had board of directors, people to answer with. But once that was established, I was then committed the next 20 years to focus on artists. So I lost 20 years of my life of my passion to become an artist. I was not able to create because I couldn't compete with the artists that we represent. But more importantly, I couldn't have the time to do so. But
so you were an art agent from which year to which year?
It was in 1997 all the way to about 6 years ago until when I turned, 7 years ago when I turned 50.
So when did you start the Winn Slavin Art Gallery?
That was started about 7 years ago. Right when I turned 50, we decided
so
to do
you
that.
basically that was your next thing.
Yes.
Okay.
But during the 20 years before that, it was meant to be. And here's why. As an art agency, we dealt with hundreds of galleries all over the world. And we had to understand not just the artist aspect.
So you have to know everyone in the industry.
Yeah, I have to know everything in the industry, the galleries, the sales representative, the art fairs, the museum, the curator. And I had to be a curator myself to understand all that. As an agent, publicist, collector, I had to know all that.
Tell me some of the ins and outs of that, like like some of the nuances that people listening would find fascinating.
It is a very, very fascinating industry. Let me think. Think of Hollywood. You know, you never understand how a actor becomes a movie star.
Yeah.
It's very similar in art world. How do you take an artist that are a dime a dozen to become a blue chip artist that could be very well known? Like anything else, it's marketing, strategy, publicity. It's like in anything else. You can be a terrible actor and become a movie star.
Yes.
Here, you don't have to be a great artist and still become the most high selling artist in the world in blue chip art because it's the marketing. You know, there's no difference in diamonds. Diamonds are not rare, but the marketing of it is brilliant by De Beers. So because of that, everybody wants it, and supply demand. It is what people are willing to pay for something is what the value is, whether it is a watch or a luxury item or a car. As limited, it's the marketing.
Your marketing is fantastic, by the way. You guys really nailed that.
Well, that's the 20 years of experience that I learned in the art world.
It's very refined. It's not. It's just well balanced.
And I am blessed to have Randy in my life. That he is the brilliant, actually, the man behind the success. I'm more of the artist. They see me. It's like actors. They see the actors, the celebrity status, but it is the people behind the scene, the promoter, the producer, the director that makes it happen. Here, I think the people that are behind me are really the significant, and you're part of it, actually, believe it or not. The art patrons are part of the formula. Because if the art patrons do not collect the art, there are no buyers. And if that's the case, then that would be not successful. So critically, without the buyer or the art patrons, this would not be successful. So you asked me a question, tell me a little secret about the art world. Think about Leonardo da Vinci or Raphael, Michelangelo, Rodin, Van Gogh, Salvador Dali, Picasso, all of them. Why are they so well recognized? Well, you know, if you understand the backside of the industry, it's all about marketing. Without certain people behind them, they would never be who they are, even if there are other artists during their lifetime or that period that are even more superior than they are. Da Vinci and Michelangelo is successful because of the Medici family, Lorenzo Medici. Van Gogh, Picasso, all that is by Ambrose Vollard. Rodin is because of Getty. Not Getty. Well, one of the philanthropists that supported him. I lost that track right now. Cantor, B.J. Cantor was the one that was involved with that. So for every successful artist, there has to be a really savvy art broker or agent that manages it. Just like in luxury item, diamonds with De Beers, or with Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Chanel, all that. You have that company that's behind it that really puts fuel in the fire to really make it work.
So are you your own agent now?
I have my own agent. I used to be agent for other artists, but as an artist myself, I do have my own agent, my own publicist, and my own manager that takes care of it because I know what it takes to become a successful artist. And as an artist, I can't be everything. And most artists are not business people. For me, I learned business as an artist, but I let them do what they do best. And I do what I can do best, which is to create and to give them and the viewer what my philosophy is. And make sure that the business is successful, but also have the world see my work and that it is not commercialized, but it is leaving something that's positive in this world.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the way you've put together the marketing your team has, like even just for those listening and watching, your gallery on Rodeo Drive is phenomenal. It's a beautiful gallery, 2 levels, and you showcase the work in such a tasteful way. And I think that it's very different to other art galleries I walk into. Most art galleries I walk into kind of have 4 walls, maybe a couple of inner walls, and just like pieces hanging out all over the place. But you really create this experience of being in the gallery.
It is like an immersive experience,
It is,
like a
yeah.
museum. Through the years, through decades of experience traveling all over the world, and seeing all the museum and exhibition with blue chip artists, we take the formula and use it for our gallery and for the artists that we represent, including myself. As for Rodeo Drive, it is very recognizable, and when you are marketing yourself as a very high desirable commodity, they will go after you. So here on Rodeo Drive, the brief story about that is that they actually wanted us there as an anchor to be on Rodeo Drive as the top gallery. So we were very fortunate that they asked us to be in that location. When we were doing that time, we ultimately found out that there were other high-end designer, big. I'm talking about like Louis Vuitton and Moschino that was going to get that space, but they wanted us there. So that says a lot about how we are marketing in a way that they want us there to be the anchor. And optics is everything. Marketing is everything. You want that what I'm selling is very intrinsically deep and profound. But at the same time, you got to make it attractive for people to look at it and people to buy and people to see it. Because you don't want to wait until afterward. Then the artist is not there to be able to share his vision. To think of Van Gogh. In his lifetime, he was miserable and in poverty. Imagine if he was successful during that time, what he can provide to his viewer during that time when he's alive. But because he was not taken seriously and he was not marketed properly, he passed away. And then ultimately, it was marketed in a way that everybody wants a Van Gogh. And now we've lost that opportunity to hear from the artist himself what he's trying to communicate and what his innermost vision is. Here, I'm trying to share my innermost vision and philosophy, why I'm alive. Because even if I'm gone, there will be probably stories and curators and historians will talk about me and analyze my work and try to dissect. But why wait? I'm here now. Ask me. Talk to me. I am the best resource to tell you about my philosophy and about my work.
So Daniel, let's talk about the next couple of years in your career. You've got a couple of films in the making.
We just talked about in terms of the optics of how a successful artist becomes so successful through marketing. What I'm doing right now is doing a formula based on what my agent, publicist, and manager wants to create this formula to become a blue chip artist. I just recently did a short film called Creation, and I'm in the short film. It's an 18-minute film, and initially it was just going to be a film about me creating 2 sculptures, but it became such a phenomenal short film that it won so many awards, even though it has no dialogue. It has sound and music. But
Beautiful visuals. I watched it. It was incredible.
It won, I believe, so far 7 awards through 20 international film festivals for best cinematography, director, short film, long short film. So it's won a lot for what it was. And that short film was for me just to share to the world about my technique, but also my vision without any dialogue to communicate what my philosophy is. And it was so successful that my agent now wants to create a feature movie about that, which I'm going to be playing in, therefore, a 80, 90-minute film with no dialogue as well.
Is this Scar City?
No, that one is called, the one movie I was talking about is called Creation.
Oh,
And
sorry.
Yes, and Creation is a movie that I'm in, and I'm creating the sculpture in there, and now I'm creating a feature film, a feature movie, box office movie of Creation. But what you're talking about is part of the marketing is that the movie Creation is me in the movie as an artist, no dialogue, creating an artwork, explaining my philosophy as an art film. And then there's another movie called Scarcity that there's a book and there is a script already been written. An award-winning director is directing it, and a very famous producer and a lot of movie stars going to play me and in the movie. And that movie is called Scarcity, and they want to release that in 2025, coinciding with the war, the end of the war in Vietnam.
But how does revisiting these raw moments make you feel? Because it's a lot about you and your past and your childhood, right?
Yes. There was about almost a 9-month interview with the screenwriter, and it was incredibly emotional. And for the last 40 years plus, I blocked it. It was in my subconscious, but it ultimately came out during the interview, and it was very, I would say, I don't know what the word is, but it was very relieving and cathartic, I would say is the word. And it made a difference, and I've come to terms with that, and it actually helped my artistic ability as well. And when that comes out, it's, again, these two movies, I think, will solidify Sir Daniel Winn's name as an artist that is in a movie that created the art, but also there's a movie made about him. So hopefully by doing this, it will give it much more of a great marketing that support as a catalyst for collectors that have been supporting me for the last 7 years or so, collecting my artwork, that what they have is going to be something that is priceless.
Immortalized, yeah.
Yes, into a blue chip collection. So I'm very excited about these two movies, and it's very exciting.
I'm excited. This will be part of it.
It definitely is, because actually this material, lucite, that we talked about here, is part of the creation movie, because the material is in the movie, and the clock, all the elements that you see here is actually going to be in the creation movie. So this is just like a fragment.
Well, I'm definitely holding on to that piece. I'm going to have to put it up, soon.
Thank you for that. I love this piece. And really, look at it.
It's gorgeous.
Touch it, feel it. Most people say don't touch
it's
the
heavy.
artwork.
I mean, forget that. It's a heavy piece. It's great. So you have a very unique background. Obviously you studied medicine. You have a scientific sort of mind and background, and then you create art. How do you meld these two realms together? Because when I look at your art, I always see this amazing blend of, science and magic. How do you bring those two things together?
I think for me, it's a very simple answer. Everything is mathematics to me. Whether I use the golden ratio or the Fibonacci formula, everything is math. The universe, how the Big Bang, the galaxies, the universe, how we are evolved, everything is math. So for me, I just feel like I have a natural, innate ability that's given to me by God or a higher being that has been given to me. So for me, I just assume that everybody's like me, and everybody's made differently, of course. But there's certain things that I'm lacking. What I am good at, I just feel that it's natural. But there's certain things I'm definitely not good at. For example, music. I mean, I see a child prodigy that is 5 years old that can go and play Mozart on the piano with no studies at all. And I'm sure that child will look at everybody thinking that everybody's the same as he is or she is. For me, the same thing is, how do I merge the two, and how I can't really explain it. All I can say is that it comes natural for me, and it's math. I look at things and the world differently. When I look at an apple, or when I look at an artwork, I see color, form in a different way, and I see it as mathematics. Artistically or scientifically or philosophically, everything to me is about math, and it makes sense, at least to me. My role is then to try to extrapolate what makes sense to me so the rest of the world, the viewers, can see what I'm seeing. Because even though I'm only speaking in 4 different languages, I'm able to speak infinite amount of languages through my art so that they can see and understand what I'm trying to feel.
Art needs no subtitles.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's infinite. And that's why I feel what I'm trying to convey is priceless, because I don't need to communicate in any languages because it speaks for itself.
That's great. I mean, look, you've obviously been very successful in your career in multiple areas, but you're also a philanthropist. So you've obviously done a lot of good in the world, and I'd love to just understand more about your philanthropic beliefs and efforts.
I think philanthropy is a natural human, I think, for me at least, a human requirement. We're here in this purpose to help each other. Humanity cannot exist without us helping each other. For me, growing up poor, desolate, abandoned, orphaned, underprivileged, I feel for what I see now in the world. There's always some chaos going on in the world. But if you can make a small difference, that's one small difference. And when I go to an orphanage and I see orphans out there, I see myself. And what if that one orphan could be better than me? that could make a difference, that can cure cancer, that could communicate in another language or another way that makes such a positive impact in the world. But if that child or that orphan has no opportunity to be able to do so, we would lose that. The world will lose that. Humanity will lose so. So being philanthropic is, to me, is a necessity because that is a part of our DNA to enhance our humanity, enhance our humankind, to support each other even when we're not here. Because as we evolve for our future generation, we all need to support each other because we are the human race. And in order to enhance the human race, we need to be philanthropic. We need to help each other. We need to do whatever we can. And I'm not saying save the world, but imagine if everyone can do something on a regular basis that they can do that doesn't affect them too much, then the whole world, I feel, would enhance such much more quickly.
Do you have any practical examples for people who want to be philanthropic, but they don't really know how to?
You know, philanthropic does not necessarily mean monetary.
Yes.
A simple gesture of a smile or a emotional saying, you know what, you look amazing today, or, you know, have a wonderful day. That in itself would enhance on the very basic. It doesn't cost you anything.
Well, to transfer positive energy. At that
Absolutely.
point.
And energy, you know, financially.
Money is energy as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Definitely. But if it doesn't cost you physically in terms of cash to put a smile, then do it. But if you can't afford $1 or something, that's $1 that somebody else can use that can support them. So as an example, I think helping each other emotionally, and if you can do it financially, do it. Or if you can do it with food, or, you know, I know that people in Thanksgiving, they go out and they help and go to the food place and do that. You know, if you can do that more often. You don't have to wait till Thanksgiving. You don't have to wait till Christmas time. Every day is a blessing. Every day is a special day. And every day could be the last day of that person that can't wait to Thanksgiving to have that wonderful meal. So if you can do something, whether financially or even if you cannot, a simple smile, a simple gesture of a compliment will help so much, because if you help that person, it's like paying it forward. That person then will pay it forward to someone else, and ultimately it changes the whole dynamic of the energy. Positive energy would attract positive energy and will exude positive energy as well.
Absolutely. I think that's very true. You know, I grew up in South Africa, and what I found is that people find a way of being philanthropic all the time. You know, in Africa, you have it's a very different world, right? So, and I think it's pretty much still the way it is since I left 15 years ago. But you go to a restaurant and you can always buy an extra meal and give it to somebody outside. You can do these small things, and it happens in America as well. But I do find that it's a lot. You know, it's a lot easier to be philanthropic when you see suffering around you because you can help. But when you're isolated, when you're living in really good neighborhoods, you don't see poor people. It's hard. It's like you don't see the ability to alleviate someone else's pain.
You know, you brought up a really interesting point that actually is the core of my philosophy, and that's why I do and create art. Is that my goal is when viewers, everyone, when they see my work, my goal is that they see a mirror reflection of themselves. And everyone has adversity in their life. And like you said, if somebody's isolated and they don't see the world as it truly is,
yes,
they will see themselves. They know their own experience through trauma, adversities, and triumphant. My work is to share that vision of self-exploration and self-understanding and self-embracing of who they are, because my work is about my life, about my suffering, as much as my triumphant. So when people see it and understand what it is, hopefully they see themselves, and without any other affiliation or people out there, even if they're isolated, they can see themselves, and maybe even then they can realize that they can help others and they're even themselves, and they can help others as well. So you brought up an amazing point that it's actually very true that all of us are isolated. How then do we understand? Possibly through art. And if not through art, through reading, through books, or through communication and through Nowadays it's social media, but you know how that is now. So through my art, I'm hoping that it makes a big difference in all of us.
Thank you. What is the most challenging experience that you've ever had in your career, and how did you overcome it?
I think, it's not really a challenging as in a career. I think the most challenging part in my life is losing someone, someone that you love so much that you ask why that happened. And for me, it's my grandmother. And I didn't even go to her funeral because in my mind, I refused to think that she passed away. And eventually, that's one of the things that I believe was most challenging, is that I missed her funeral, because I ultimately come back and I go to every her anniversary of her passing and holidays to the cemetery. But that was tough. And then the passing of my father and the passing of my stepmother, that was probably most challenging to me, because I can handle a lot. But losing someone, you don't know why that happens. But I then look at my art and I say, you know what? Practice what you preach. Life is short. Excuse me.
Take your time.
And all of us will eventually lose someone in our life.
I understand.
But you embrace it.
Yeah.
They're still here. Our energy is still here. Their energy is still here. That's why in my work, we hold the key of time. Even the symbolism I do in my art with my painting or sculptures, when I create the horns, people think, oh my gosh, the horns are so mean and all that. No, the horns represent immortality. That's what old masters use in their work, because we are eternal. We live forever. This is just an organic shell. That's why I create masks in my artwork, because to represent it is a facade of who we are. We live in a shell of this 80, 90, 100 years. But when this shell deteriorates to the earth, we're still here. The energy is still here in the universe, and that's what I need. As much as I communicate to my art, I need to remember that. So the most challenging is that I need to embrace my own language that I'm trying to communicate to the world, that everything that happens in your life, embrace it. But that, to me, is the most challenging, is to embrace my agony and my suffering of my sadness, because those are tough. And everyone in this world will experience that, whether it's their child, their loved one, all of us experience it. So my point is that I need to embrace it still, and I will. And I'm still struggling to embrace it. But I can't be a hypocrite. Creating art for the world to embrace, I need to embrace it as well. The world right now is in chaos, and a lot of people, what's going on, has lost a lot of loved one as well, and they're embracing it. And I understand and I feel their pain. So I want to share that is a struggle that we need to overcome, because understanding that all of us still exist, even when this organic shell is not here, we're all here together. My grandmother is right here. My father, my stepmother, the people I love that are no longer physically here, they're still here. And I need to really embrace that. And that is where the struggle is in me. But I'm working on it, and I think I am overcoming it. There's just times that it's difficult, but I just need to practice what I preach.
I don't think you need to overcome it. I think you need to find harmony with it.
Yes, absolutely right. You could be my therapist.
But I've lost my mom 3 years ago, so I know what it's like. It never goes away. I mean, Mother's Day is the toughest day of the year for me every single year, and so but you have to harmonize it. You have to say it's part of life.
Exactly, and that's exactly what my artwork is that you cannot have one without the other. You can't appreciate life without death. So their life means so much more. It's like no sweet without the sour. And that's exactly what my philosophy is. And you're absolutely right, is that come to terms. And that's exactly what I say, is to embrace our existence, and whatever happened is meant to be, because it's part of life. And I believe that what you just said is exactly, you now are the artist talking to me as the viewer now. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I want to touch on one more thing before we go into the more sort of the more fun part of the conversation, the rapid fire questions. But you're Sir Daniel Winn. You were knighted, so I'm very honored to have a real living knight in my studio. But can you tell us about that?
Oh, to me, that's surreal. I mean, who would have thought that? In my lifetime, at least, who would have thought that? Oh yeah, I'll grow up. I'm going to be knighted. I'm going to be a knight. It's like that would never.
It's a fairy tale, right?
It's a fairy tale. You don't even.
It's
that's
an
not
orphan
even
from Vietnam is knighted. Amazing.
In Vietnam, by the way, they don't even have that terminology of what a knight is.
Yeah.
So when I became a knight, they had to come up with a word that's close to resemblance of what a knight is. But who would dream of such a fairy tale? But it happened, and I think it was almost a surreal experience for me, and it's all because my philanthropy. It's because of what I'm doing to my heart, and I didn't ever expect anything in return. But what happened was about 4 or 5 years ago, I've done a lot of charity for the last decades or more, and the son of a prince of Germany goes to these events, and he saw what I've done. And I've never met him. And I get a call eventually by one of his assistants to have a meeting with him. I said, oh, that's great. And that was nice. I thought it was just more of acknowledgement, like a appreciation of what I'm doing for children and orphans all over the world, even in Africa, Asia, America, everywhere. So I met with him, and he admired what I did, and he asked a lot about my background. And basically, it was more of an interview. And then I get a different call later on for another meeting, and it was a lunch, I remember, and he says that I want to talk to my father. This is the prince talking to my father, Prince Waldemar in Germany, to nominate you to be knighted. And my father only knighted 5 people in his lifetime, and I want to nominate you to see what he says. At first, I thought it was a joke. And secondly, there's always this thing in my mind that, okay, this can't be real. There's got to be a catch. So, of course, I talked to my partner, Randy, and my board of directors and company, and then they all looked at me and said, okay, what do they want? That's what we're saying. What do they want? So then I said, I have no idea. So then I had a lunch again with them, and I said, okay, I'm with all due respect, what is it that we can do for you? Is there anything that would you like for us to contribute? And I put it in a very delicate way instead of saying, okay, what do you want for this? So the prince looked at me and says, if you're asking if we need anything or want anything, the answer is no. You couldn't pay $1 million to get this title. This is something that I feel who you are and what you're trying to do through not just physically and financially to what you're doing, but through your art, because he loved art. And I was moved by that. So then eventually the Prince Valdemar and the princess flew over to meet me as well. And then at that time, they were very impressed. They researched and did a lot of diligence of background check and gave me a call stating that, they would like to present me of the title of knighthood. I was like, really? I was speechless. And I think my first word is, why? And the exact word that he responded to me, I remember now, is because you ask us why, is why you deserve it. Because you're not expecting it. And I didn't, and to me, I was confused still. But he gave me an option to either fly to Germany to be knighted or have it here and anywhere I want. So I talked to my partner, and we decided, let's do it here. We'll have some people at the gallery where it's surrounded by art, and that's what we did. And he gave me a knight, and it's not like what people would think with kneeling down and putting the sword. Because I asked that. I said, will I be knighted with a sword? And he looked at me and said, would you like that? And I said, that's all I think of. He says, no, it would be a ceremony. It would be they will give me a medallion and a certificate. So it was a formal event, but it was not like a sword thing, even though if I requested, I'm sure they would. It was very surreal.
Well, congratulations. What an honor.
I was shocked by it. But, for me, I'm still Daniel. I mean, Sir Daniel is only used if I need to do charity at another country where that title makes a difference, that I can bypass a lot of red tape. But I'm just Daniel, the artist, and someone that wants to do something positive in this world. That's it.
That's fantastic. Well, let's get in some rapid fire questions. What's your favorite book?
Book. Do people read anymore?
I do. Look at my books. I change these up, whatever I'm reading at the moment. I'm busy reading that one over there.
I like to read science fiction. I like to read, and just start with Lord of the Rings, those kind of things. For me, I like to go into another world. I like to live in a land of fantasy. And I'm not particularly like any kind of war or drama or anything that's serious. I like to have something that is unique and different, and something that is fairy tale. And I love reading. You're gonna laugh when I said the last book I read was, and rereading it was actually a gift because Randy knows what my favorite book is. So he brought me a book that's Grimm's Fairy Tale. But the real Grimm's Fairy Tale. Yeah, the Brothers Grimm, but not the nice version, the really dark version. I loved it. And of course, the latest book that was given to me was by Da Vinci, The Story of Da Vinci, I believe. So I'm starting to read that. Interesting, but I love Grimm's Fairy Tale. To me, it's such a fantastic, brilliant genius that brings you another world. So that's my favorite book right there.
Well, great. We'll add it to the show notes below. What's your go-to habit that everyone should implement in their daily routine?
Go-to habit. You talking about good or bad?
Well, that's up to you.
Okay. Let's see. I would say that my bad habit is I'm on social media because unfortunately, my publicist created an account on my Instagram, Facebook, so I have to go on there to respond to some fans. So I believe it's my bad habit because I feel like that is not really a waste of time, but I can put my time in another.
From your fan side, that's a good habit.
That's a good habit. But for me, I feel like, I don't want to do this, but I got to do it. So that is something that I don't like to do. But my good routine, I would say, is I love to create at the Foundry. When I go to the Foundry, when I create, is when I'm in another realm. That is something that I could wake up and do all day. But although it's dangerous, though. So I try to limit myself nowadays more because the fumes and the fire and all that is so toxic that I try to keep it a minimum. So those are the two habits that I do on a regular basis, including painting, of course.
So Daniel, tell me what's the best bit of financial advice that you've ever received?
Okay, that's a funny question because you're talking to an artist and who has never had any business degree or studies, and mostly, I would say all artists are not business people. So you're asking the wrong person. But with that said, I think the best advice I can give you is have a good business partner that is good in business. Yeah. However, with that said.
But what's the best bit of advice you've received?
Oh, what I received?
Yeah. That you implemented maybe? Or
take chances, but take calculated risk. No risk, no gain. But don't do it frivolously. That's the advice that I've been given, that you've got to take chance in life. And even if you don't succeed in financially, you learn from it. And that in itself is worth the experience.
That's powerful. What's a common misconception about business, life, art that you'd like to set the record straight on?
For art-wise, it's not always not what you see. It's not all champagne and caviar, yachts and private jets. It's a lot of hard work. Everything in life that looks prestigious and looks very high-end luxury is not what is perceived. There's always that you have to work really hard and struggle, and a lot of sacrifice has to be made to get to the point where you want to be. So I think that's the misconception, is that nothing appears to what it needs to be. And I think the prime example is me. People see me as a successful artist, but without knowing the history and the background and the struggle and the triumphant, they won't understand. So the thing I want to suggest to people is really dwell into everything and never judge the book by the cover.
Yeah. Absolutely.
go deeper into that, and then you learn more and appreciate more about that.
And that's why I love hosting the show. I get to bring people like you here, and we dig into your past, what you've had to go through, the struggles, the successes, because often you see people, and you see the facade that they create, and not in a bad way, but it's just because if you don't take the time to understand them more deeply, the shell is what you see, and you don't see beneath it.
I think humanity, we all have vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And because we all feel so vulnerable, we put a shell around us. And we all do that on a innate way of protecting our emotions and protecting who we are. But people need to understand that and never judge anyone how they look, what has happened, because there's always an explanation. Because if you don't understand that and you judge, it's not productive and it's not fair. So what I'm saying is that the best way to understand is to really, truly feel the other person and what they go through.
Powerful. If you could go back in time and meet one person, one famous historical figure, who would it be and why?
Real or not real?
Let's stick with real.
Okay, let's stick with real. All right. For the real person, as an artist and as in my background as a medical background with philosophy, intriguing in science and...
Can I guess?
Yes.
Leonardo da Vinci?
There you go. The guy intrigues me,
me too.
so much.
Yeah.
He is like one of the enigma
Yeah.
that I want to really understand who this guy is, because from what I've learned and read about him, he's pure genius.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of painting, but philosophy, science.
He invented the helicopter.
Exactly. And you know that for an incredibly famous artist, he only did like 9 paintings in his lifetime. That's it. And he's known for being the most famous painter in history. And he only did 9. Whereas some artists out there like Picasso, who did 10,000, you can't even compare to him. So he's probably the one that I want to dwell and figure out what's in his mind, because he's such a brilliant genius. So that's number one that I would definitely want to meet.
Well, I may not have met or been in the presence of Leonardo da Vinci, but I have been in the presence of your genius, Daniel.
Oh man, that's
you.
too much.
Thank you so much for being on the show, and really enjoyed having you.
Oh, it's actually my pleasure, and I want to thank you for not just having me on the show and sharing my vision, but being part of my art journey, being an art patron, whether it's mine or any other artist, really accentuates as a catalyst to help us artists to communicate and leaving a positive, lasting impression for future generations to truly understand, just like what Da Vinci has done and all past artists have done. So thank you for giving us artists ourselves and me this opportunity to share our innermost visions.
My selfish pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.